What's going on, everybody? This is Malik Prince from Team Xbox, and you're listening to the Xbox Expansion Pass.
Welcome one, welcome all to episode 88 of the Xbox Expansion Pass, recorded on Sunday, June 27th, 2021. I am your host, Luke Lohr, the InsipidGhost. In this episode, I'm joined by Danny Peña of Gamertag Radio to reflect on this year's Xbox E3 conference while comparing it to years past. In addition to Danny stepping into the host role, we'll later speak to Piotr Bomak of EXOR Studios to discuss their upcoming game, the Riftbreaker. Enjoy. Yet another week of gaming is upon us and behind us. Welcome to XEP, discussing all things in the Gamerverse as they pertain to the Xbox ecosystem. And as I am wont to do each and every week, I like to start the show by offering words of kindness to those who have made my gaming week better. And this week, the words of kindness go to our guest, Mr. Danny Peña of Gamertag Radio, a man who has been working hard to bring the coverage to multiple outlets this past summer for E3 and beyond. Danny Peña, thank you for joining me today.
I know. Thank you for the invite. I know you interviewed my partner a while back.
I did.
She was on, yeah, and I heard a lot of great things about the interview too. So,
Oh, man.
yeah, it was really good, really really good.
That warms my heart, man. Rihanna Manuel, one of the most wonderful people I've had the pleasure of chatting with, seeing her work out in What's Good Games and now G4. A lot of work to bring about equality in the gaming industry for multiple from multiple perspectives is a joy. But you yourself do quite a bit of that as well. I mean, we see you frequenting Telemundo, a lot of Spanish speaking outlets. I mean, your podcast, Gamertag Radio, is now award-winning and record-holding. Tell me a bit about Gamertag Radio.
Yeah, so Gamertag Radio is a show I created over 16 years ago, and it's about everything. At first, it started about Xbox, but then uh, I think like after 2 3 years, I decided to do about just a gaming in general. So the PlayStation, Nintendo, PC, and so on. So what we do is we have a lot of great roundtable discussions, debates, a lot of fan mail questions, and also interviews with people in the gaming industry. So yeah, we release 2 episodes every week, and now we have over 1,144 episodes now, man. So it's a lot of episodes.
Goodness gracious, content for quite literally years. Impressive to see there. Congratulations on an incredible run that is still ongoing. Of course, yeah, you're one of your co-hosts, Paris Lilly. We saw him recently at the Xbox Game Showcase Extended, which is incredible.
hmm
Moreover, I'm seeing you doing a lot of things in the Spanish-speaking coverage there. Uh,
hmm
Tell me, what are you working on outside of Gamertag Radio to kind of further the awareness of the gaming industry?
Yeah, I've been doing. I know you mentioned about Telemundo and stuff like that. I'm also been teaching classes about podcasting
Mm-hmm.
on with Bright. So that's brightlive.com. It's Ashton Kutcher and a couple other people also from like the movie industry
Mm-hmm.
and music industry. They're involved. So they invited me to be part as a launch partner
Mm-hmm.
to teach podcasts. So already I've done already 2 classes. My third class is coming up July 20th. So that's gonna be a lot of fun. It's a lot of podcasters that have questions about like how to record, how to get an audience, all that stuff. So yeah, it's really good. I've been having a blast, and also I've been doing a lot of like speaking engagements uh, now virtually because slowly things are opening up.
Mm-hmm.
But previously, I used to go to a lot of like podcasting conferences, podcast movement, Podfest, and a lot of like smaller ones across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I also did a speaking engagement, my first international one in Dominican Republic, and I did it with a university called InTech.
Mm-hmm.
We launched a free workshop for developers in gaming and also content creators. and it was called Game Developer Conference Santo Domingo. So we did it. I invited my friends at Unity to do like a free workshop how to use their engine, and the place was completely packed. A lot of people had questions, not only how to create games, but also how to become a content creator. So that things like that I've been doing a lot lately, like the past couple years now.
Absolutely, and clearly you have
Mhm.
a talent for it. But do you enjoy being in the teaching role?
Yeah, it's fun. It's actually a lot of fun. People know that I've been doing this for a very long time, so they ask me a lot of questions about that stuff. And at the same time, it's like passing the torch to the next generation of content creators. So yeah, I'm enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. Yeah, I spoken at like at schools, high school, middle schools, university, colleges like that. So
So you may not know this, but I am a middle school teacher myself, going on 10 years plus now. So careful, Danny Pena, because you might get
mm,
an invite from me at some point. That is such a cool thing to be in a role where you get to help people learn a craft that can help their hobby or help their profession.
yeah.
What question do you think you're asked most in that role?
Everybody will ask, how can I get money right away? And I always tell people, look, it's not a quick thing. Some people might get lucky with that quickly, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I always tell people to focus on local gaming community, your community, or whatever content it is that you're planning to do, and just have fun with it and build your community. And once you have a good audience and you feel like, okay, I think it's the right time to maybe get advertisements, that's when you step it up. Because if you have zero listeners and you don't engage with anyone online and you
Mm-hmm.
try to get an advertisement, why a company is going to advertise on the show if you
Mm-hmm.
don't have an audience? Because they want people to buy their products, or sign up for whatever it is that they're trying to promote on your show. So
Certainly.
yeah, I tell people to just build your community. The last class that I had on Bright was all about engaging with the audience, how to get an audience. Because I think the key thing is you have to make it easier for people to find you.
Mm-hmm.
If it's difficult, people are gonna go to the next show to listen to. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just be everywhere. I think that's what it is, and be consistent with like releasing your show content and stuff. So
Well, certainly that's that you're able to draw on your experiences with Gamertag Radio, and we're gonna get to gaming news. But while I've got you, I want to know some of your favorite Gamertag Radio stories. But before we do that, you have to tell me. And I've heard you say this story so many times, Danny. I just have to hear it again, if you'll indulge me. Tell
yeah.
me the Bonnie Ross story. I think it's hilarious. I was in the chat with Miles when you were on
Oh,
Chatterdays.
yeah,
I just love this
yeah.
story.
Yeah, so we were at E3, and this is when there was Xbox was showing Master Chief Collection.
Mm-hmm.
It was coming out, and actually, minutes before, this is a story that I didn't mention on the Mouse Show. So before we went inside, we were Paris and I, we were outside just waiting to go in, and while we were waiting, Aisha Tyler pops up, and she's there with her team, and I'm like, oh man, Aisha, she just hosted Ubisoft conference, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm there, she's right next to me. I'm talking to Paris, and I'm like, yo, Paris, Aisha's right next to me. Oh man, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so then while waiting, the door opened for us to go into the Halo Master Chief presentation,
Mm-hmm.
the collection. So when they open the door, Steven Spielberg comes out.
Oh,
Yeah.
whoa.
So he's like right in front of me, and I'm like in the middle looking at Paris. Paris is like across from me, right?
Uh-huh.
And Aisha Tyler and him just talking, like saying hi, and I'm just there like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, what in the world? Like, so that's one of the stories from the Bonnie and Ross. So then they were talking about like the Halo series that was coming out on Showtime years ago, and he needed to do more work, Steven Spielberg, right? So then it was time for us to go inside to see the Halo Master Chief Collection presentation. So we go inside. Great presentation. Bonnie Ross was talking with all of us. So then the presentation was done, and that was the last day of E3. So usually we record a lot of content during that week. So my
Mm-hmm.
voice is like completely like done. My voice is done. Like I have to take a break for like a week or two just to relax after E3 because of it. So um I mentioned to Paris, hey, is it cool that I should, like, we should record an interview with Bonnie? He's like, yeah, do it. Go for it. So I asked the team, "Hey, can I interview Bonnie Ross?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah." So she came. She came over.
It's just that
And
easy, huh? It was just that
yeah,
easy.
super easy. Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah.
Oh man.
So she comes to us, and while she's walking, like for some reason my voice, like it wasn't like I couldn't say anything. Like I was struggling just to talk. And I had my recorder and mic ready to record. So I was like, "Yo, Paris, please, you have to record. Go here. I can't do it. My voice is messed up." And Paris wasn't prepared, so he got stuck. He's like, "Oh my god!" So Bonnie
Mm-hmm.
comes to me. They're like, "All right, let's do the interview." I'm like, "Oh my god!" So Paris started recording it. That interview maybe lasted like 2 3 minutes because Paris was nervous. He didn't know what to
Mm-hmm.
say. It was like super random. So that's that. So the interview came out. A year later, we go to an event and we're hanging out with Michael Pachter, Kiki Wolfkill, and also Bonnie. At
You say hanging out. You're just hanging
yeah,
out with these people. These are legends in Xbox. That's so
yeah,
cool.
yeah. We were just hanging out. It was like an event. It was like an
Mm-hmm.
Xbox event, and we were just talking, chatting, and uh, and we started. We brought up that conversation. Actually, Paris was the one that brought it up, and he was pointing at me like, "Yo, this guy out of nowhere did that. You know, Bonnie, I had to record you. I was nervous, this and that." And Bonnie started laughing. And then she said at the end, "You wouldn't be surprised. I probably was nervous too, because usually higher ups like that, and just people in general we interview, they want to be careful on the things they say during an
Mm-hmm.
interview. You know, so ever since that day, Paris was like, yo, like we're humans, man. They're humans too. We just gotta have great conversations and just be ourselves. You know. So ever since then, we even gotten even better throughout the years with just recording interviews in person or virtually. And yeah, that's the Bonnie Ross story. But it helped Paris to become a better interviewer because of it, you know. So he
Mm-hmm.
always brings that up everywhere he goes. The Bonnie Ross story. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, like further along from that, I mean, you're both doing big things now. I mean, however many years later, it's
hmm
paying off, man. The hard work, the good stories, the fun vibes. That's awesome. Any other
Yeah.
standout stories from GTR coverage?
GTR. There's so many that I can't. Well, we had Reggie on the show. I interviewed him this
Mm-hmm.
past year in February for our 16th anniversary. Last year we had Phil Spencer on our show for our 1000th episode.
Right.
That was interesting. That was a very cool. This is pre-pandemic. He just got back from Japan, so we were talking about that, and everything was awesome. Must listen. It's an awesome conversation. And yeah, we had Peter Moore. We had like a lot of people on our show. We travel around the world, and we've done content over there too, in other places like Paris, UK, stuff like that. But the best one for me was when I started before GTR, when I went to the Xbox launch, the original Xbox launch, and because I get invited, Microsoft invited me to go Times Square in New York City when I used to live over there, and they wanted me to play Fusion Frenzy with Bill Gates, and that was a very interesting thing that happened out of nowhere. And they wanted me to talk about the console because I got Xbox, the original console, early back in 2001. So yeah, I've been now creating content for 20 years, man. I have like so many stories. I just gotta like sit down and remember because there's so many things that happened throughout the years, But
That's
it's
awesome.
insane. Yeah.
You simultaneously you need a memoir, but by the same token, it's all been recorded. Like you've got all this content for however many years, 20 years of coverage of you talking about your experiences in gaming and otherwise. I mean, it's all there. We just got to find a way to get it edited down for a memoir, man.
Yeah, I mean, I did a documentary a couple of years ago. I think like 2 3 years ago. It's
Did you
called Gamer.
really?
Yeah. It's called Gamertag Radio, a podcast story. I had it. Actually, I recorded this for our community at first, right? And everyone was like, "Danny, you need to like submit this to film festivals. Like, this is actually really good, man." I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yo, you should do it." So I submitted to a bunch of film festivals, and I got awards. I attended multiple film festivals because of it too. The biggest one in New York is called the Dominican Film Festival.
Mm-hmm.
That one they usually do it at Washington Heights.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they did the premiere for the In the Heights movie that just recently came out. It's called the United Palace.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was cool. I took my mom to the red carpet, my sister, family. Yeah, it was like amazing movie. So check it out. It's free. Gamertag Radio podcast story. I have it on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Story.gamertagradio.com. It's like 61 minutes and explain like how GTR got created, how I met Paris, how I met Pete, all that stuff, man. So it's good. Really, really good. Highly recommend it.
That was in the coolest way news to me, and now I've got it bookmarked, and we're gonna be checking this out later on. That's very cool, man. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned GTR traveling all around the world, doing coverage all over the place. You mentioned talking to Phil Spencer after he left Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Xbox in Japan is one of our topics for this episode,
Mm-hmm.
and it is ripe for conversation. Xbox had an interview. Let me rephrase this. Let me just rephrase that altogether. The Xbox business boss in Asia, Jeremy Hinton, was recently on an interview that IGN Japan took on, and he talked about the massive growth that Xbox is seeing over in Japan. And my eyebrows raised at that because
Mm-hmm.
that is not a typical story that you hear. It has been pretty standard that Xbox struggles in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Sony and Nintendo seem to have a vice lock on that market. And historically, the American company Microsoft has struggled to find a comfortable foothold in Asian markets, not specifically and only Japan, but Japan, of course, certainly there. But now, Hinton is going on to say they're observing a very high percentage of Xbox consoles being sold in Japan to people who have never owned an Xbox before. I can speculate as to why that's happening, Danny. But
Mm-hmm.
if you'd like, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are going into why they're seeing such growth in an Asian market and specifically a Japanese market. What do you think?
Yeah, that is a great thing because when we had Phil Spencer on our show, we brought that up. Like because they, Xbox, especially him, he don't want to give up on getting the consoles over there and getting more developers to create games for it. So, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think is um, Xbox Series S is a very sexy console. I love the design. It's a lot smaller,
Mm-hmm.
and I think in Japan they just love they like more stuff smaller like consoles, mobile. Nintendo Switch is a big, very, very big console within Japan. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one. Number two, Xbox Game Pass helps out a lot because now you're subscribing to the service, you get all these games, and they've been adding a lot of Japanese content there too. So Yakuza series is there. Just recently, Like a Dragon, which is a must play game that came out last year,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that personally is the reason why is increasing. Plus, the marketing has been different. I think over there in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
and another thing too is S Cloud. I
Yeah.
think last year Phil Spencer did a video, or was it earlier this year? He did a video just mentioning that Xbox Game Pass Ultimate S Cloud is going to be launching over there in Japan, and one of the things he brought up in our conversation that he went to Japan to present Game Pass and to have a lot of meetings with developers in Japan because they want to get those type of content for not only in Japan but also here in the States.
Mm-hmm.
So like recently, Scarlet Nexus came out. I know there's a marketing deal with Xbox, so they've been pushing that a lot. Things like that. So if you think about it, the Xbox 360, there was a lot of JRPGs during that time.
Mm-hmm.
The Xbox One days, that generation was kind of lacking big time with Japanese content. You will get some here and there, but the thing that brought up on not only in our show but in other shows is when if you're a fan of JRPG, right, and Xbox is getting more content available for us for this platform, I think it's important as a fan of JRPGs, support it as much as you can, even if it's supporting it through Xbox Game Pass or just buying it, because now the engagement is increasing. More companies now like, okay, it's worth making these games for the console. But if everybody's just ignoring it and not really supporting it, then it's gonna be bad for us. We're not gonna get content like that in the future because of it. So we gotta support it as much as we can. I think.
Certainly so, and a lot to break down in the points that you made. I
Mm-hmm.
think back to that Xbox 360 era where they had games like Blue Dragon and a number of other Japanese-focused games, JRPGs, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And that was lacking in the Xbox One generation, and the 360 for all of its incredible accomplishments. I mean, it rivaled the PlayStation, which was a difficult thing to do in its time coming off the PlayStation 2. The Xbox One didn't see any of that success. The initiatives didn't seem
Mm-hmm.
there. There was a very distracted level of marketing and intention with Connect kind of ending and beginning the 360 to Xbox One era. Um, Fast forward to now, and Jeremy Hinton saying they're selling out stock within minutes. And to your point, that Series S console, it's sleek, it's comfortable, it's attractive looking. I
Mm-hmm.
still can't find one. I have a Series X, that fortunately, but I do not have an S. I'd like to have one for downstairs, and it's just tough to find if it's selling out here and there. There's a lot to be excited about. And to your point as well about xCloud, there's a lot of potential in xCloud, particularly in markets where the internet infrastructure is just that much more superior. I'm thinking about Japan. I'm thinking about South Korea,
Mm-hmm.
portions of India where there are massive potential for adoption there.
Mm-hmm.
It's impressive. And to that point, Danny, we had a listener whose name I can't pronounce especially well, Atoriaste Gaming. He wanted to know if there was a focus on cloud gaming and streaming as a way into new markets, but whether or not it was time for a handheld device because of the adoption of people checking out Game Pass. I don't know that I was on board with the handheld device given uh, I think we have a mutual affinity for the Razer Kishi and some of the elements of xCloud there, but
Mm-hmm.
handheld device, reality, possibility, worth it?
Nah, I don't think. I think Xbox shouldn't even waste their time with creating a handheld. Now with xCloud, they could do this anywhere, any device, mobile, tablet, TV, even the Xbox One console. You could
Mm-hmm.
stream games from there. If let's say you want to play Starfield, like there's people that can't afford to get the next gen consoles, right? But if
Right?
they have the original Xbox One, they could stream through xCloud and play
Mm-hmm.
those games too. So there's different ways to play it. So for me, especially last year, I played a lot of xCloud. I will go to Central Park in New York,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll have my Kishi, Razer Kishi, and just play Minecraft Dungeons, Gears, stuff like that, Halo, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll play it smooth, 4G, 5G. Sometimes I'll travel pre-pandemic. I'll go to like let's say to Orlando or other places, and I'm at the airport for like a good 2 hours, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
there waiting for my flight. I'm playing Gears of War. I'm playing Halo. I'm talking to my friends online.
Mm-hmm.
Doing, it's like I enjoy that. Back in the early days, there was rumors that Xbox was planning to create a handheld back then, but that never went through. It was
Mm-hmm.
called they were calling it X Boy.
Yes.
So yeah, so what happened? I had Robbie Bach a couple of years ago on our show to talk about that, and I asked him, and he said, "Yeah, that was real. They were planning to do that, but it never went through. So originally it was a rumor, and yeah, it was official. So X Boy. So S Cloud to me is X Boy for Xbox. That's how I see it. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't need to waste money on manufacturing those device handheld device because I
Mm-hmm.
could do that on my phone. I could do that on any device. So I think that to me is more important. And at the same time, I have to mention that having S Cloud available worldwide is going to help, especially low income families that can't afford to buy a console, but they have their Android device and they could just play and be part of our community, and play all these games online by just them being part of the service. And it's cheaper, way cheaper than buying like a 499 console, 299 console.
Right, right, and I'm so appreciative that you mentioned the low income families that might just want access to gaming because I mean, as an educator, I see that often. Their portable devices, even if they're a bit outdated, are windows into the future. And
Hmm.
when you have xCloud that can run comfortably on an older iPhone, an older Android device, when you're bringing xCloud to Xbox Ones, which is they've stated a very clear intent to do,
Hmm.
those Xbox Ones are going to have their lifetime extended and you'll still be able to play modern games, but not needing to buy new hardware. It'll be a lot cheaper to pick up an Xbox One in 2 years than it would be a Series S or X.
Hmm.
And that brings up something that Remy Ismail said a few weeks ago on XEP, was that uh, when more people from more diverse backgrounds, more places around the world, income level, racial diversity, gender diversity, persuasion, etc., when they get their hands on games, and now by way of xCloud,
Mm-hmm.
that means more people are likely to enter into the industry of developing and creating games, which would then bring about even better, cooler, more interesting games that we have not gotten a chance to see because the demographics creating games aren't as diverse as they otherwise could be. So this technology has far-reaching implications beyond just you and I getting to jump on a few matches in Gears with our buddies, pop in our
Mm-hmm.
headphones and attach our controller. It goes well beyond that to the future, passing the torch to new developer reigns as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's one of the reasons why I did that event in Dominican Republic in Santo Domingo,
Mm-hmm.
because a couple years before I went over there, I was, talking to my friends, and I'm like, look, I want you to show me the community. I want to see how it is now because I haven't been there so long. And when I met the gaming community from like the developing side and just
Mm-hmm.
gamers in general, they will always would say they feel left out. They feel like companies don't do anything over there. Um, One is because it's a smaller country compared to like a country like Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
Brazil. There's a lot more people over there that will actually would spend money on consoles. So I decided like I'm gonna get my friends from the gaming industry, and let's do a workshop. Let's have events once a year or something like that. For because when I went to the event and I got to meet a lot of developers, they would show me their games, and I'm like, oh my god, these games could be on Steam, Nintendo Switch, Xbox, PlayStation. I wish people will see that, but they just don't have that support. So I think by me doing this is going to open the door slowly on other developers that will create cool and unique gaming experience like the ones that you were saying, and I would like to see that, as much as I can. I'm going to help out and bring more people from the industry to inspire them, and so at the end I don't want them to feel left out. I want them to feel that they're also part of our community.
Certainly so. Certainly so. And it bears mentioning that just in passive research on this topic and the next one, which is just Xbox's cloud gaming division,
Mm-hmm.
it's mentioned in multiple articles that Microsoft has a relationship with a company called Gameheads, which is a technology training program to prep low-income youth of color from ages 15 to 24 to get jobs in the industry. And I know that Microsoft also has initiatives for blacks in gaming, Latinx in gaming. Um, I love hearing this, and we're celebrating I suppose, the Xbox aspect of it just by way of my research. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
hopeful that that's happening more and more, well beyond just Microsoft.
Oh yeah, for sure. I want to see that from every single company.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like as of right now, I'm not seeing that from Nintendo. I'm not really seeing that from PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying from just experience, maybe they are. Unless somebody please tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm seeing this now more with Xbox, with other companies too in the game industry. So hopefully we get to see everybody involved and doing more of these things. So just to give back and let's make some change.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And listeners, anybody that does know of these programs that we may not be aware of, please write in, let us know, tweet at us. It's important that we get to spread the love regardless of console base. And that's an important factor there. But Danny, I mentioned research for the Xbox Cloud Gaming Division. The name Kim Swift comes up consistently of late.
Hmm.
Kim Swift joining from Google Stadia. She was a game design director over at Google Stadia. She is now going to be taking over the Xbox Cloud Gaming team as a senior director. I was unaware of who Miss Swift was at first, but in reading about her arrival to this cloud gaming division, it was very clear to me that Microsoft is doubling down on xCloud technology, which I mean, it was already clear before, but having cloud native games is a possibility. They don't know what that looks like. It looks like they're exploring that technology, which is a lot to be excited about. And then Jeff Grubb did what Jeff does. He went out there, he did some investigative rumor reporting, and VentureBeat is saying that Swift's projects are somehow intertwining with Hideo Kojima's projects. And I'm not sure if you know who this Hideo Kojima fellow is, He has been the bane of the abandoned teams, poorly shown marketing. Uh, I'm going down the rabbit hole as I feel bad for that team making abandoned. But Kim Swift, Xbox game cloud gaming division. That's pretty cool, right?
Oh yeah, that's really really cool. And here's the thing. This is the conversation I was having with Mouse, and also talked to my crew about this from GTR. That I see the potential of companies, developers especially, creating games that will also use that technology of xCloud. And by a flip of the switch of a button right there, they could easily change the gaming experience, adding new enemies. The environment might change. Everything will change because of xCloud. So, for example, if you play like a game like Flight Simulator, which is coming out for the console version is coming out soon on
Mm-hmm.
Game Pass, uh, if there's, let's say, a hurricane in a certain area, let's say Jamaica, the Caribbean, or let's say Florida, you could fly your plane because the cloud is getting all this information from actual weather from around the world, real time. And you could go and fly and just go and see how it is, like just experience that in real time, just using the power of the cloud in the game, Flight Simulator. So like things like that, I would love to see that in the future. Just real time, just major changes. That the only way we could see that is through the cloud. You know,
Mm-hmm.
instead of just having like those quick little updates, they will have the updates through the cloud, and we don't even notice that they made that. So I'm excited for the future. I think that part of gaming from S Cloud is going to be very very interesting. It's going to be very, very cool and
The
exciting.
Certainly the real-time data that can be brought into gaming. I mean, Forza Horizon 5 is, forgive the pun, it's on the horizon as well, and we can look forward to seeing different types of weather elements there. uh,
Hmm.
the potential for reaching more people, having people that are not necessarily playing the game proper but influencing the game. We've seen technologies experiment with that before. There's a lot that could be happening there. um, my hope is that whatever it is Miss Swift is doing, we find out more about it in the years to come. There are rumors of an Xbox streaming stick, which would make sense, I think, for a lot of households. We also know they're bringing Game Pass to a number of different smart TVs in the future. Cloud gaming will need a figurehead, will need a voice, kind of like Sarabon for PC and now Xbox proper.
Hmm.
They'll need a voice for people to turn to with questions about just what the cloud gaming division is doing. And right now, I don't even know exactly what those questions would even look like, but that's why I find this to be so forward thinking.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, they need to educate people, and then we could start asking these questions. Like I gotta give you a one example that, and I realized when I went to the Dominican Republic, I got to see everybody on their phones watching videos on YouTube or Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way how they figure that out is because somebody got educated on how to use it, and that person was just telling all their friends, okay, you go to this app, you watch these videos. So that's what they need to do with with the cloud, with S Cloud, all that. Once they start educating us on the stuff that they could do in the future, we're gonna start asking these questions like, okay, you know what I'm trying to say? So I see there's probably stuff that they haven't even mentioned that we don't know yet,
Mm-hmm.
that it might be like one of those, they're taking it to the next level when it comes to that type of experience, stuff that we have never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the part that I'm super excited about, all of this. So,
Certainly.
and at the same time is helping to change the industry when it comes to that type of new experience that we have never seen before. So that's the part I'm excited.
Agreed.
No.
Absolutely agreed.
Hmm.
Absolutely agreed. Now, we are coming off a jam packed news season, right? It actually got to calm down just a little bit last week, which was nice to kind of have everybody collectively catch their breath. But Xbox made huge splashes at this year's E3. We had so many people writing with questions for you. And I'm
Hmm.
sure a few of them had questions for me, but really they were for you, Mr. Pena. And they wanted
All
to
right.
know so many things, and I'd like to get into it. Our first question comes from Mr. Badbit, who hosts a PlayStation podcast called The Trophy Room. He
Mhm.
was rather enamored with the Xbox showcase, rather impressed with it. He says, what has Xbox shown you in its E3 showcase that you are excited about and that excited you about the brand? And with a PlayStation event rumored to be imminent, what would get you excited for that showcase?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think when it comes to PlayStation, I think they need to show games that hasn't been announced. Get us
Mm-hmm.
excited. Show us a timeline of future games. It doesn't have to have a date or anything like that, but tell us what type of content we're gonna get to see instead of showing us, you know, God of War, all these, all these. Show us
Mm-hmm.
new. I would like to see new IPs,
Mm-hmm.
especially like Horizon. Horizon Zero Dawn, when it came out years ago, that was a brand new IP. Ghost of Tsushima, new IP, and those are phenomenal games.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would love to see, and also show us next gen only games, because now I think Ratchet and Clank is going to be the only next gen game for PlayStation 5
Mm-hmm.
for a while, because everything else is cross gen. So it's God of War, the New Horizon game, all that, even Gran Turismo, all that is going to be cross gen. Where is the PS5 games? Because I played Ratchet and Clank and that was like amazing. What as of right now, it's my favorite game of the year. As of right now, so
Really
that's the thing
nice.
that I'm looking forward to from PlayStation. Those type of content. Now with Xbox, the thing that I like about the presentation overall, I felt like it was the best presentation they ever done.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like they're more confident more than ever. It was nonstop games left and right. 20, 30 of 20, 27 out of 30 games all day one on Game Pass. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love that there are not only showing games that's coming out now, but games that's also coming out in the future, like the Outer Worlds, Redfall, Starfield, and the part that I love the most, every game that they show, these are games for only Xbox Series X, S, and the cloud and PC. No more having games cross gen, because that's the thing that I love about Xbox now,
Mm-hmm.
is that they're being very open and saying, okay, this is what we're planning to do. It's not like hiding. It's not like they're showing a game now and then the next day there's a press release. Okay, it's also cross gen. That part I don't like. I like when they just straightforward. Hey, this is how we're planning to do. People might not be happy about it, but at least the communication is there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that's the thing. I'm very excited about Xbox. They've been releasing all type of cool games. It's not the same. Everything is different. It's not shooters or racing games. They're changing it up this time
Mm-hmm.
around. But yeah, I'm very very curious to see and hear more about Halo Infinite. I'm excited about Starfield because I love Bethesda, love their games,
Mm-hmm.
and I would like to hear more about Perfect Dark and games that I announced before. And Hellblade looks amazing too.
Mm-hmm.
The
Agreed.
next one, yeah.
Agreed. And
Yeah.
Bad Bit, to answer your question on my end, I was enamored with how they were able to reintroduce Halo Infinite. I thought that was a really masterful way to recover some of the damage that had been done in showcases prior. I know you and I were both very excited about Halo Infinite in its first reveal, but the masses were not. And so to see them
Mhm.
be able to reintroduce it successfully for me was very exciting. Moreover, and to that same point, how they were able to integrate Bethesda comfortably into their presentation, and never once did I feel like, okay, here we're hard stop. Now we're seeing Bethesda. Hard stop. Now it's Xbox Game Studios. It felt seamless,
Mhm.
and I think that is why there is such a mass wave of positivity for Microsoft and Xbox right now in a way that didn't exist through the majority of the Xbox One generation, and I think that's what I'm most pleased with as far as the brand. And for the PlayStation event bit, I want to see what I think a lot of people want to see, which is games for the future while honoring the past. I know we're having rumors of standalone Ghost of Tsushima games. I think that's cool, very neat. I
Mhm.
like the Miles Morales sized stuff. I and I'll pause for just a minute on the general stuff, but Danny, I felt like Miles Morales was a very special game
Mm-hmm.
for representation, for character building, and it felt just right for any on a gaming side for any gamer who maybe Spider-Man PS4 was just a little too long for, or maybe they couldn't get into. It was a
Mm-hmm.
really nice experiment of getting an expand alone style game for at a 12-hour mark. I want to see more of that for
Yeah.
sure.
Agreed. Agreed. And I grew up in that New York City. My mom lives in East Harlem, where the game takes place.
Mm-hmm.
So I will walk around the area of there Harlem to see if like the building is there and everything. The Central Park is around there too, and yeah, it felt good. Like I mentioned this on our show last year that I completed it, and I broke down. I cried because it felt good seeing my hometown there, and also like you said, representation.
Mm-hmm.
My peoples, especially Dominican, Puerto Rican, Latinos, Afro Latino.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was awesome seeing that. Really, really awesome. And plus, I think it helps people to learn more about different cultures when they play games like that.
Yeah.
Um, and it will get them curious, especially now with the movie that came out, In the Heights. That it's another area where I actually grew up. I lived in that area, so seeing that with my partner, oh man, I was breaking down like, oh my god, I can't believe this, man. Like, because usually when a movie studio or even gaming in general, they'll show that area is all
Mm-hmm.
about crime, negative, that no, show us the positive. There was a lot of positive things that they talked about in Miles Morales. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm talking about. So Insomniac did a really, really great job on that, man. And I can't wait for the next game
Yeah.
in the
Agree.
future. Hmm.
Agree. It's it's the right way. It's the right way to do it. I guess is the most simple method there.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mr. Ainsley Bowden from Season Gaming, he asks, he would, or rather, he says that he would love to hear from Danny his thoughts on the current state of gaming for media and coverage, and the reality of there being countless podcasts and show nowadays. So that's a big
Hmm.
one, Danny. If you could just
That is a big
tackle
one.
that one easy, go right
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, I think it's good. I love seeing new content creators every day. I love seeing that. When I started, there was not that many of them, not many podcasts. But now there's podcasts everywhere. But the good thing is there's content everywhere, and the majority of people are gonna have their own way on how to report it, and you're gonna find that show that you love the most. So I think it's a good thing, really, really good thing. Now the challenging part is if someone that is a content creator want to stand out, but there's so many shows out there. My advice is just be you, just be consistent, and just create content and just have fun. People are gonna relate to that, to the type of stuff that you release to the world, and they will become a fan of yours, or they'll become a listener. So just keep doing your thing, and don't worry so much about what the next person is doing. What it matters is that you're having fun, and maybe you could be inspired by the next person instead of copying what they're doing. And I think that's the mistake that a lot of people do is
Mhm.
they're like, okay, so and so is doing an amazing job and they're getting so many hits. Let me try to do exactly what they're doing. But guess what? You're not getting that results, the same results as them. And that's when a lot of people just give up and tap out. They can't do it anymore.
I
So
see a
yeah,
lot of
just be you.
people. Yeah, I see a lot of people trying to be the next kind of funny or the next gamer tag radio, the next DLC, and that's it's not realistic. It's just not
No,
realistic.
at all. Look, I'm cool with a lot of content creators. Cool with kind of funny, DLC, what's good games. But everybody has their own flavor, like their own style of how they create, they're creating content. They have their team. We have our own way, and I'm happy with the audience that we have, and I'm glad that every day I get new emails and messages of people like, hey, I just discovered you recently. I love it, and they'll go back and listen to the archives. So yeah, it's good. Really,
It,
really
it
cool.
it's always cool to me because I learned about Gamertag Radio, which is a obviously a very big show from a smaller outlet and our mutual friends, the Mega Dads. Shout out to John. Adam, you're weird. Uh, Adam and I go back and forth. He doesn't like Rogue One, Danny. He doesn't think Rogue One's a good movie, and it makes me worried. But they
Eh,
introduced me to you guys. You know
oh,
how cool is
really?
that?
That's cool.
Yeah,
That's really really cool. That's
yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So there you go there. Let's see. Mr. Boomstick XL from the Xbox Factor podcast, which he hosts, I believe. He wants to know your thoughts on the 180 Microsoft has done since the 2013 disaster. And before you answer, I want to take this one first. Uh,
Mhm.
Boom, I don't think it's been, it is a 180, but it wasn't a quick one. It was over the course of years and years of philosophy changes, hardware revisions, a team mentality, services, and it's been a step-by-step, stage-by-stage process. And if you look at each E3 since that 2013 showcase that admittedly didn't go their way at all, you're seeing a concerted effort to improve upon one or two aspects. So that's how I tend to look at that 180. Danny, I would imagine you were there, and with
Mhm.
your years of experience, you've got a more in-depth take. What you got for me?
I think the most important one that you forgot to mention is community feedback. A
A good
lot of
point.
a lot of feedback from old fans, from new fans, and having a new leader in charge now helped everything. So now they have Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, Aaron Greenberg now is in a different team, and it's been good. I love the communication. They've been really really open. Just recent a couple months ago, they made some changes with Xbox Live Gold
Mm-hmm.
that it was like a surprise. We were vocal on Twitter about it, just saying the truth about the change, and
Mm-hmm.
the team made the change within hours.
Mm-hmm.
Hours they made the change. So I'm glad that they're open. I'm glad that they're still focusing on making the product better. And the most important thing is we as just fans of just gaming in general, we have to be vocal and just say things that we don't like the right way, not targeting people or
Mm-hmm.
sending death threats or anything like that. But just say what is it, why you don't like it, and I bet you they will make that change because throughout the years when we go to E3 or any event and we'll get to see or interview people there, before we record, we talk and we'll hang out, and they'll mention to me or my crew that they love the challenge because they want to release the best product for the world, to the like the community and all that stuff, so but if we don't say anything and everything is good, things are not changing. It's going to be the same thing over and over again, so yeah, just be vocal, and I'm glad that they're making all these changes.
Do you think that there is a risk that as
Hmm.
Microsoft kind of retain or gets back to its former glory and exceeds it and is extremely successful, they will eventually forget to listen to the community yet again?
It depends. It all depends on leadership.
Mm-hmm. What do
That's
you
how I
mean?
see it, because 2013 and actually the end of the Xbox 360 was Don Matrick that took over, and he's very focused on like mainstream and is his way and that's it. And I didn't like it. There was even a time where Xbox didn't want to talk to the community because of him. Unless you're CNN or a major media outlet, that's the only way that they will do interviews or they'll invite you to their booth. And I was very disappointed because when I met Xbox, it was all about the community. It was all about not only the mainstream media but also the 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 smaller content creators that love the product and all that stuff. So you need that balance because honestly, the community was the ones that actually went to the store at midnight on day one and buy the product and buy all
Mm-hmm.
these games. Major media, they'll promote it to a crowd where they might buy on day one or they buy like 2 3 years later. You know what I'm trying to say? So we're like more
Mm-hmm.
hardcore, the hardcore audience, so
Right.
they need to focus on that and continue because look, it's been working for them right now throughout the past few years now. It's been phenomenal for Xbox. The numbers are climbing, more people signing up to Xbox Game Pass, S Cloud, more people buying the console, so I think that if it's working, just keep continuing to do that. And now if there's the wrong person in charge of Xbox or any other company, that's when things are gonna like go downhill if they're not doing the things the right way.
Good point. A good point. Well made point at that. And,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking back to what you said earlier about leadership and then also some of the names you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
having people like Sarah Bond up on stage. I noticed at the past E3, we saw Phil Spencer later in the show and not throughout the show, but it never felt awkward because they're bringing in these new voices that can stand on their own, offer content, be likable,
Mm-hmm.
and be there. It's no longer just one voice. I think that says a lot about what they're trying to do for their future. So here's hoping that continues.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I love that when they started the show. Of course, they were gonna have Todd Howard to talk about like Starfield, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the actual just Xbox as a whole, I was glad that they had Sarah Bond to open it up, the game showcase. I think that's phenomenal, and that's a sign of you're gonna see more of her in the future, a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, it was all about Phil Spencer, but I'm glad that they're changing things up and not only having Phil, but also her, Aaron, and other people that are the higher ups of Xbox, like, and just continue doing that. I think that's phenomenal. Really,
Agreed.
really cool. Hmm.
Fully agree. Fully agree there. Let's see. The next question comes from my good friend, Mr. Todd Oxtra. He says, the meme that Xbox doesn't have any games, I think specifically Xbox doesn't have actually many first party top tier games releasing regularly, while true is changing. With 23 studios, what cadence should they realistically target for releases? Mm,
Hmm. Well, I think now there's no excuse now. People saying that they don't have no games. Let's be
right.
real. It's 23 studios. There's a lot of games that's been announced now for the past year plus,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the confidence is there. Plus, having Bethesda now part of Xbox, that's even more now.
Mm-hmm.
All those games that's coming out from Bethesda and also Xbox, all of them are going to be exclusive. I'm excited about that part. And also, even this year alone, for 6 months, we're going to get a big game also on Game Pass every month for 6 months
It's true.
for the rest of 2021. That's huge.
Yeah.
The only company that I remember that has done something like that for a whole year was Nintendo, for the Nintendo Switch. Every month there was a new game, exclusive game for Nintendo Switch. So
That's
I'm
nuts.
glad that Xbox is doing that. That's when
Agreed.
you know they're not messing around. And this is just, think about it. This is early. This is early. Imagine 2022, 2023, and beyond when you get all these games that have already been announced, and we're gonna get it almost every month. Not only AAA games, but AA games, indie games, smaller games, like games that just like experimental, like this one from Obsidian,
Mm-hmm.
Grounded. That was just an experiment.
Man.
Small group of people at Obsidian that are working on it, and Xbox was like, hey, you know what? This game will work for Game Pass. Let's go for it. The release as an early early access type thing, and then throughout the year plus, they've been adding more content. They just announced new content coming in the game. So that's the part that people are not really thinking about. They're thinking more about the AAA games. This
Mm-hmm.
is more than that. Psychonauts, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a lot of fun
I
this
appreciate
generation.
the diversity that they have. That cadence, I think, one big one a quarter is realistic 2022 and beyond. Well, 2020, late 2022 and beyond, you might get a big AAA one, but
Hmm.
I like a lot of those. I want to say double A, but that doesn't, I don't mean to imply that they're underproduced, but Grounded, great example, right? Like
Hmm.
that's a great example. Successful game, hit 1 million players in early access, like week one. Adam Brannick's team's like 12 people strong. That's a great example for what I think the future of Game Pass is. And I think also Game Pass will help titles that may not have been able to have a lifespan
Hmm.
past critical success. I'm thinking Dishonored 3, Evil Within 3, Wolfenstein 3, some of those games that have an audience, people are excited for it, but maybe it didn't do commercially as well as they would have liked. Game Pass affords that team a second chance. Maybe I'm
Hmm.
overreading into it. What do you think? I mean,
No, I agree. I totally agree with you. Totally agree. And not only that, but now when the studio is working on the game, they don't have to worry so much of like, okay, we got to sell this. What are we gonna do to sell this a lot? out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now they have the freedom of just create games because they're not risking it. Now the games are going to be available on Game Pass. People are going to try it out automatically. You know what I'm saying? So that's the part that a lot of us are not even thinking. They're thinking of like the sales, like the old way of the industry. Things are changing. This is the way that is going to help gaming become even better because now the studio is going to have that freedom to just create unique games. Usually we'll see that from the indie developers, and if it's become successful, that's when a big publisher or a big studio will copy from an indie studio and add it to their games, because now they're like, okay, now we see is selling. What we're going to see in the future is games that just become big because now people are testing it out, downloading it through Game Pass, and now the word is going around. Now people are buying it on Steam, on other places too. So
Mm-hmm.
that's exciting.
Danny Pena, you have been so generous with your time today. I've had an absolute blast picking your brain, talking history of gaming. Would you please take a moment and plug any of your latest projects that you'd like to reaffirm for people or point people towards? Thanks for being here, man. This has been awesome.
No, well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm glad that we finally made this happen. If anybody would like to stay in touch, follow me, Godfrey GODFREE on Twitter. You can also search for Gamertag Radio on any podcast app available. Just search Gamertag Radio. Make sure to follow us, subscribe, and post a review if you can. And yeah, let us know how was the podcast. I think it was actually a lot of fun recording this, man. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely, buddy. I appreciate your time, and I can't wait to see more of what goes on in the future. And we'll have to have you back for sure, man.
Yeah, for sure. Just let me know. Let's do it.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with Danny Pena from Gamertag Radio. So proud to have had him on the show for sure. And I'll be sending you guys next to an interview with Piotr Bomak of EXOR Studios to discuss their upcoming title, The Riftbreaker, which I played recently in the Summer Game Demo Fest thing that Xbox had, where they had 40 demos up. And really enjoyed my time with it. A really complex mix of twin stick shooter meets RPG elements with real-time strategy. A really comfortable, interesting, fascinating mix to all three of those genres, as it were. And I do ask Piotr just about that. If you are enjoying the show so far, I would love it and be so appreciative if you would take the time to click like if you are on youtube.com/Xbox Expansion Pass, or if you're on iTunes, drop a review. If you don't have any ability to do those things, it would mean the world if you would help share this show out and help it grow and reach more people. I take that as a personal compliment and honor when people are willing to do that, and so I thank you all for taking the time to listen to this show thus far. I'm going to send you guys to the interview now. Remember, you can find me on Twitter at InsipidGhost. And, of course, on all your podcast services, you've already got it, the Xbox Expansion Pass. Enjoy. All right, I'm very fortunate now to welcome Piotr Bomak, community manager for EXOR Studios, to talk to us about the Riftbreaker coming to consoles and PC later this year. Piotr, thank you for joining me.
Hello, and thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
Well, I'm ecstatic that you are here. Really and truly. I know we were talking before we hit record. I am thrilled to talk about Riftbreaker. I have played the demo that was included in the summer game demo set from ID at Xbox and over the summer. So I'm thrilled to talk to you about it. Let's get to it, though. Riftbreaker. It's a lot to try and describe. What is it?
Well, we found that it's easiest to describe what Riftbreaker really is by using, titles of other things that inspired us. So, in essence, the Riftbreaker is a game that combines elements of Factorio when it comes to base management, base building, economy. It combines it with Diablo because there is lots of hacking and slashing hordes of monsters and gathering some sweet loot, as well as they are billions when it comes to defending your base against hordes of alien creatures that come time and again to destroy you, and they come en masse. They heavily outnumber you, and you have to deal with them alone, which is which is a tall order at times, but it's really exciting at the same time. So we try to combine the elements of all these games from all these different genres with in a sci-fi setting, which kind of resembles Starship Troopers at times, if you ask me.
Hmm.
Which is a good or bad thing, which might be a good or bad thing depending on your opinion. But we loved it. We loved it. So I'm really happy that it evokes such feelings.
It does. I mean, I'm when you look at the art style, I'm seeing mech suits, vicious monsters, and a lot of fire. So I can see the influences of Diablo, and They Are Billions right there at the gate. And you had me at mech suit when I saw that. I was just in. There's a lot of elements of gameplay that go into a game like Riftbreaker. I mean, you are playing a twin stick shooter in some cases. You're doing action RPG elements at various points, base building. It's a lot. There's a lot of mechanics there. Even in the prologue for the summer game demo, I was not overwhelmed, but there was a lot in play there. How do you guys go about onboarding players into that?
We try to be as mm, I'm looking for the right word. We try to pace it as well as we can, because when you throw everything at the player at the same time, tell them to build a base because there is an attack incoming, and go and hack and slash 100 creatures right now because that's what the quest requires. You are going to lose interest because that's too much. So
Mhm.
the key here is to get the pacing right. So what we tried to do with our prologue and in our demo version, are the versions that we showed off at trade shows when they were still a thing. Hopefully they will come back soon, because we do love going to those. Is showing off all these elements one by one. So at the beginning, you start with just your mecha suit, and your task is just to get some resources, then build up some basic buildings, and then only after you are confident that you can build something, that you know how to gather resources, only then we introduce the fighting mechanics. And we introduce the basics of all these different genres very early on, but they expand over time, but not all at the same time. Um, you get you get access to more advanced buildings through research, and in order to do research, um, you have to scout the planet a little bit. So it's always like you explore a different element of a different genre to unlock access to the next episode, which is also going to be a different genre. So it's it's all about pacing in general. It's all about pacing.
Gotcha. Now that question came from Todd Oxtra. I want to make sure I give him an appropriate shout out there. I One of the things that was really interesting to me is that as you are pacing people up through the prologue, and then as I watch like developer streams, lots of information on screen there for different levels of economies, enemies, what you're doing with ammo types and resources. How did the team settle on the appropriate way to display that in the HUD?
In general, doing the HUD or the GUI in the GUI is a very complex process, and it took us lots of attempts, and it's very iterative. We do a
Iterative,
lot of
yes. Yeah.
iterations. Sorry, English is obviously not my first language, so I might make some mistakes here and there. Uh, the first version of the GUI, of the HUD, of the display of the ammo, the economy, it was a lot less legible. We
Hmm.
tried to make it look nice and have transparency here and there, and have things with beautifully illustrated, and we try to have icons for each and every little thing. And we realized at some point that hiding things and making them obscured by all these neat little animations and neat little effects, it doesn't help players. So we just decided to give you everything up front.
Hmm.
And even though it takes up lots of real estate on the screen, at times a bit too much, we are trying to limit ourselves, especially now when it comes to working on the campaign mode.
Hmm.
We display your current objectives all the time in the top left corner of the screen. We are trying to have them as short as possible so that you can look at the game, not the HUD. It's not the HUD all the time,
Hmm.
but with lots of elements that you have to take care of. Your base, your mecha suit, your ammo, your economy. We found that it's really necessary for the player to have very quick access to all that information at just a glance.
Hmm.
So hiding some of these things was just maybe, I wouldn't say not an option, but it wasn't the optimal choice.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now the viewpoint, because you mentioned like being able to actually see the game, you can see a lot. I mean, you can see a whole lot, and that has a lot to do with I think the viewpoint, traditional twin stick, like kind of top down elements there. But the game is beautiful. I mean, that art style is gorgeous. I'm seeing like really vibrant elements of the world, like plants and animals, ambient animals that are like birds that are just kind of flying around, to some of those vicious monsters that tend to attack in hordes. Right next to those very futuristic elements of building and crafting that you guys have involved there. That had to be some work to get in there and settle into that specific art style.
Naturally, our art team is four people, and we also have the design team, working alongside them. And when it comes to the design of the mecha suit and the buildings, the weapons, um, it's mostly just imagination and influences from other games that we played and other works of art in the sci-fi setting. Obviously, when people look at the base, they say, "Oh, it looks like StarCraft." Yeah, obviously, we all played StarCraft, and it's deeply ingrained in our in our brains, and you won't ever escape from doing a sci-fi game and not being compared to StarCraft. But it's a good
Hmm.
comparison. It's really nice to be compared to something like that. But when
Hmm.
it comes to the nature and everything you described, those vibrant colors and all these environments, all the plants and creatures, what's really funny is that they look very alien and they are certainly bizarre at times, and they make you feel like you are in an alien world. But most of the reference materials and most of the inspiration for those came from species that are, that live on Earth.
Hmm.
And it just shows you how incredible our nature here on Earth is, and how much you can learn and how much inspiration you can get from those. For example, most of the plants that you can see in the game um, have a couple of versions. They range from very small to very large specimens.
Hmm.
And we also have a vegetation life cycle system in the game. So if you cut a tree down, it will regrow over time, and it will go through all the stages from like very small sapling to a large tree. And
What?
we yeah
That is so cool. I had no idea. You built an
yeah
entire life cycle into that. That's so cool.
yes. It's especially important if you try to use plant biomass as your source of energy, because that requires you to, harvest some of the plant biomass in the jungles, and forests, and fields of Galatea 37, the planet that the Riftbreaker takes place on. And when you cut them down, if you wait a couple of days, they will just grow back, and you will be able to use them again. So yeah,
Huh.
that whole cycle is also based on reference material from like real Earth species, real life Earth species. We took a look how mushrooms develop from very little specimens to the big ones. Um, we studied how cacti grow, how trees grow, what grass looks like when it's young, and what it's like when it's mature, fully mature. So it's all Earth. It's all Earth, but mixed in an alien way.
That is so cool. So cool. I had no idea that was in there. And I can remember my plant biomass facility, it stopped working at one point. I was like, huh, I wonder why. And then it started working again later, and I feel like that probably has something to do
Yeah, you
with
just
it.
probably you just went lawn mowing and gathered some material for it.
That's so interesting. Very cool. Very cool.
I'm glad you
Well,
like it.
I do. Now tell me this. What modes are you guys aiming to have at launch? Because I've heard uh, things about Horde mode, but it's not called Horde mode. And there's a lot of hack and slash gameplay. There's resourcing. Like, what modes you guys going for at launch?
So at launch, we are going to have two basic game modes. The first one is going to be the story campaign, which is going to take you through Ashley's, our protagonist's mission on Galatea 37. She lands on Galatea 37 after traveling through the Rift. It's a one-way portal from Earth to that planet, and her job is to establish a two-way portal that's going to allow humans to come to Galatea 37 and establish a colony. But in order to do that, Ashley has to set up a base and build the rift itself, which requires lots of uh, rare minerals and materials that she will find around all the different biomes. So during the campaign, you are going to have your main base, then scan the planet looking for those rare resources like palladium, titanium, uranium, and you are going to find them in four different biomes. So we have the jungle biome, the sort of acidic plains biome,
Mm-hmm.
the volcanic wasteland, and also a radioactive desert. So you are going to venture out into those places, carry out some research, then set up outposts that are going to gather all those rare materials for you, and of course, in the meantime, you will have to defend your own base, defend those outposts, because during the campaign you can have several bases working together. It's sort of like the regions in City Skylines or SimCity. You have
Mm-hmm.
your main hub, your main HQ,
Mm-hmm.
but at any point, you can travel to a base that you have set up elsewhere, and your economy still works. All the machines that you left are still digging and excavating resources from the ground. So you can expand your economy to a really planetary scale, and eventually you open up the portal back home. And all of this is going to take around, well, it depends on the player, but for a regular player, I would say that it's about 40 hours of gameplay. Not rushing things, researching everything you want, everything you can, and experimenting. So it's about 40 hours of exploration, survival, and strategy. And so that's
That's a
the
lot of
campaign mode.
game.
It
That's
is
a
a lot of
lot of
game.
game. Cool. All right.
Yes, and the second mode is a bit quicker. It's called the survival mode. And in survival mode, you take part in a randomly generated 30 to 60 to 90-minute mission, in which you have to set up your base and survive against waves of enemies that grow larger and tougher as the time progresses. So I forgot to mention that during the campaign, everything is randomized as well. You will never see the same map twice. The maps are generated from random tiles, and you never find resources in the same spots. You never find the same creatures. You never know where you are going to get attacked. So there is an element that of randomness that introduces lots of replayability into all of this,
Mhm.
and survival is a way to pack the whole campaign into a 60 or 90-minute session. So those are the two modes that are going to be available at launch.
That's so cool. That's a lot of game, as I said, but I like the approachability of that survival mode as well. But definitely, if you're sitting down to play Riftbreaker, you're not getting quick sessions. This is meant to be a good, healthy, hearty experience every time you sit down to play the game.
But we are not going to make it hard for you if you don't have time to do it all in one sitting. You
Mm-hmm.
can save the game at any point
Oh,
and
okay.
just come back where you left it. So if you have just 10 minutes, yeah, sure, go ahead. Destroy a wave or two, build up a couple of buildings, then come back a day or two later. We're not going to stop you from doing that.
Brilliant. That is so encouraging to hear. Awesome. Awesome. Well, this next question comes from listener Famous Seamus. He says, my question is, was it difficult to combine base building with the hack and slash action RPG type? Were there times where you had too much of one gameplay style versus another?
Yes. Yes, it was very difficult. That's a very good question. Actually, it was very difficult to balance these two, and we are still not there entirely, um, because when you have your mecha suit, you obviously want to make your player feel powerful and that your weapons are doing something against the hordes of creatures that you encounter. And we want to give you the feeling that you can really stand your ground. But on the other hand, when we give you too much power, then your base is underpowered, and all your defensive towers, all your walls, the meticulous systems that you set up, they are basically not able to defend themselves because they are too weak. But then again, if we make them too strong, then there is no point ever leaving your base because the waves will never threaten your base enough to force you to fight in the open field.
Mm-hmm.
So balancing is something that is very tough. Luckily, we have a huge community on our Discord that helps us test the beta, and well, now it's the beta, but they helped us for over a year with the alpha version of the game, and they give us little bits and pieces of ideas what they would do. We cross-check them with the things that we feel should be changed, and then we arrive to a middle ground, which um, very often works. However, we are still not at the final point. We are still not happy where the balance is. At the moment, the base is a little weak and the player is a little strong, a little weaker than we want, and a little stronger than we want. So we are still going to introduce changes to that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, now what if I want to play with one of my friends?
Well, if you want to play with one of your friends, then you will have to wait a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We initially planned the Riftbreaker to be a single player only game,
Mm-hmm.
but we got so many requests for co-op and comments saying this game screams co-op. I have to play it with my friends. So we decided, yeah, I guess we can think about this. And then when we gave them this little bit, then they said, "Oh, so what's gonna be in co-op? When are you going to deliver co-op? Is it going to be available at launch?" So the official version is right after we finish working on the single player version of the game, when we finish working on the story campaign, when we release the game as 1.0, and of course fix all the inevitable problems that will arise after that, then
Mm-hmm.
we will start working on the co-op version. Um, we do not have any details about it yet. We do not have any specifics because, well, very simply, we haven't designed any of it. There is only 14 of us in the studio, and we have to focus on doing one thing if you want to do it well. So that's why when it comes to co-op, unfortunately, you have to wait a little more.
Gotcha. I was amused as I watched live streams over the last few weeks. Co-op after release, just subtly
Yes,
there reminding players. But I appreciate that. That's really important for expectations.
I
Uh,
appreciate you reading it because I get so many questions during the streams that ask co-op when that I am starting to wonder whether that sign makes any sense.
no, it makes perfect sense. Now, you guys, XOR Studios, a 14-person studio, I believe, based out of Poland. But I have read, and I'd like you to confirm or tell me if I'm misinformed. You guys have created your own engine for the game. Is that true?
Yes, that is true. It's not been created specifically for this game, but it's been a result of what happened at the very beginning of the studio. So, EXOR started as a modding group,
Mm-hmm.
a very in early 2000s. Officially, our history as a registered company begins in 2007, but EXOR existed a long time before that, and they created mods for various games like Unreal, Half Life, and their first official release was Die in Pain, Rest in Peace, or Dip Rip. That's one of the first of the 5 mods that were available on Steam, and it's a total conversion of Half Life 2 into a game full of vehicular combat in a post apocalyptic world. So the guys decided that they want to continue doing mods, but they needed to have some money in order to secure their survival. So they decided to make a commercial project.
Hmm.
And while doing so, they obviously needed an engine. And at that point in time, there were no good and free engines for what they wanted to do. Unreal was still paid, and the license cost was far too much for a startup company. Unity, I think, did not exist at that point or was not good enough yet. So the guys just decided that they are going to make their own tech, and Zombie Driver was born on the engine that would later be called the Schmetterling engine, and it worked very
Quick
well.
note. Zombie
Yes.
Driver is an insanely fun arcade game. It is arcadey madness. So any listener that's not checked it out, it's constantly in deals with gold, and it is a hilariously fun arcade game. I just want to drop that in for the listeners. Pardon me.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So yeah, Zombie Driver was born from that, and it was a huge success for that time. It was one of the first indie games available on Xbox Live Arcade. Because it was in times of Xbox 360, it was one of the first indie games available on Steam, and that gave EXOR the resources that they needed to continue. And they decided that if it worked so well last time, well, let's continue. They added new tech to the engine and continued developing it. Mm, and eventually, X Morph Defense was released a couple of years later. And at that point, the engine was so advanced and we knew it so well that we decided, yeah, we are just going to roll with it. We are not going to change our ways. We don't want to learn we don't want to force ourselves to learn the workflow of any other engine. Let's just continue. So we um, added even more new features to the engine. This time it's Schmetterling 2.0. So what's new in this version of the engine is new rendering pipeline. We are fully physics based when it comes to rendering. Um, we have added lots of very fresh tech like ray tracing support, or lately the AMD Fidelity FX Super Resolution. So we keep expanding the tool set that is available to us, and we are very comfortable working with this. The best thing is that if something doesn't work in your engine, you don't have to scour through tomes of documentation and you don't have to ask on the forum, because the guy who's responsible for that is just 2 desks away, and you can just walk up to them and just ask, hey, what's wrong? Why is this not working? and you are always going to get your answer.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's so cool. That's just it's neat to see the origin there that a small studio has been around for so long, but also have your own tech to kind of play around with in so many ways. That's really neat. Um, well, I understand Riftbreaker is going to be launching into Game Pass day and date. How did you guys land on that decision, and what advantages will come from that decision?
Well, it's just an opportunity that we got at one point, thanks to, I think, being very active on all media, because we have a very open development cycle. Maybe not development cycle, but development process.
Mm-hmm.
We constantly inform our community what's going on with the game. We are very transparent what's working, what isn't. I stream twice a week, showing off what the game actually looks like, and I guess that attracted the people who were responsible for that, uh, for that thing, and attracted also, I guess, people responsible for uh, Game Pass, and we talked with them, and we did. Luckily, we reached the conclusion that we could land in Game Pass, and you know, it's always a great thing because with Game Pass, there are lots of games there. All of them are available to subscribers for free.
Mm-hmm.
And most of those people would have never checked out the Riftbreaker because we are not a well-known studio. It's a new IP, but maybe just because it's available for them to them for free, maybe they will check it out. And that's all we care about, really. We want the game to reach as many players as possible. We want as many players to enjoy it because we are in this for the players. We are gamers ourselves, and we want to do what's best for the players. So if we can enable them to get the Riftbreaker just a little easier, whether it's through Game Pass or whether it's throwing the build both on Steam and on GOG.com, it's something that we are going to do. Accessibility is key.
Well, you mentioned it briefly in that closing statement there. Of course, Riftbreaker not just coming to Xbox, also coming to other platforms, and many of our listeners are not Xbox specific. You mentioned Steam, GOG. What other platforms are you guys looking to release your final build on? I know that it's available in some places for early access as well. And then I'm curious if you're able to comment on pricing. How do you guys go about deciding that as well?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So the game was initially planned to be released on PC on as many storefronts as we can. Because, as I said, accessibility. Some people have preferences and are very adamant when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
sticking to their preferred shop, to their preferred storefront. So yeah, we were initially planning to release this on PC and then port it to consoles later. But obviously, when the Game Pass um, situation arose, it was clear that we had to start working on console ports as well. So luckily, when it comes to development, the Xbox Series consoles are super easy to develop for. They are very powerful, and there is not that much work needed to just run the game on the console. Obviously, there is development to there is a lot there are lots of things that you have to develop. There are lots of things that you need to comply with, but it's not as difficult. You don't have to downsize your game that much. So yeah, back to the question. The Riftbreaker will release on PC and it will be available on Steam, on GOG or GOG.com,
Mm-hmm.
on Epic as well, and on Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S, as well as PlayStation 5. And those are all coming this autumn. When it comes to price point, it's $29.99 US, um, $29.99 US. And why we landed on this price point? Well, you know, we are still an indie game. It's not a triple A title. It's not gonna cost $60. So We think that's a fair price for the amount of content that we can deliver to you and for our work.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, I leave you with this, Piotr. The Clint Coombs, a listener, wrote in. He says, "I just played the demo of this. So hyped for this game. Twin stick and strategy. What a great hybrid. Please just tell them that thank you for putting this together, and that I can't wait for the final product." And so I wanted to close with that because Clint, I, and many others are very excited for the Riftbreaker to launch when it's ready.
Thank you very much. Yeah, if you're excited and want to know more, then I'm going to do a little self plug. We have a Discord. We are very active on that Discord. It's available at discord.gg/EXOR Studios. You can talk basically with all the developers in our team uh, every day of the week, and we have a very vibrant community that's also very much into modding. So if you would like to try out everything that the Riftbreaker has to offer and more, you can check out the community mods that our Discord members have prepared. Because what's funny, we released the Riftbreaker prologue more than 10 months ago, and it was only a very short snippet of the campaign, not even the campaign, because it's a mission that takes place before the campaign, and it's like half an hour long, and it's meant to be just a demonstration of what the game has to offer. And then people started tinkering with files and eventually unlocked the entire survival mode and found a way to generate their own randomized maps. And we are super happy with that because we started as modders ourselves, and we plan on making lots of modding tools available to the community, including our own map editor and mission editor. So you will be able to generate basically anything that you can dream of. So if you'd like to see more while you wait for the full version to release, then discord.gg/EXOR Studios is the place where you can check it out.
And how about on socials? Any socials you'd like to plug beyond Discord?
Mostly, we are active on Discord and on Steam. We also have profile pages on Facebook and Twitter. It's a very simple: facebook.com/EXOR Studios and twitter.com/EXOR Studios. And if you need any help, if you want to ask us a quick question, if you need some support or anything else, then just send us a message and we'll be sure to answer you back.
Piotr Bomak, Community Manager, EXOR Studios, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.